The food tech revolution is here. That's what the panelists of our next discussion claim to be real. Let's welcome the moderator, Ahmad Piraiee, the director of Startup Grind, Marcin Poplawski, business executive at Nestlé Poland, Michał, co-founder of Foodtech.ac, Henry Shelonzek, co-founder of MadDriver, and Mateusz Klotz, partner at Hejka Capital Markets Group, Lucid Capital, and R&D Consulting. Let's welcome them on stage.
Thank you. So, still good morning for people that are in the Central European time. We're going to have 40 minutes of lots of content. And the last thing I want is to waste your time by just doing a small introduction. Just one thing I have to say is that whoever really likes to eat and drink definitely have to listen for the rest of the conversation. Guys, if you don't mind, all of you together would come over and then I will do the proper introduction. Please come on stage. You can come over. Perfect. Hey. Good. Welcome, everyone. I mean, the saddest part is that, as I said, like, we don't have any food here. So we have to fix that part. If you don't mind, let's just, from that side, we start doing the introduction, and then we take it from there.
I hear you very badly, just in case. So I'm supposed to introduce myself. Marcin Poplawski, business executive officer for the food division in Nestlé Poland, and working actually in the food industry for the last 20 years in different countries, in different roles.
My name is Henry Shelonzek. I represent MadBiotech out of Katowice. We are a microbial science company that produces non-alcoholic fermented beverages.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mateusz Klotz, and to introduce myself, I generally concentrate on developing R&D projects and then financing the commercialization stage. And I run the Lucid Capital R&D Consulting. That's the company which obtained public funding. And secondly, I run Hejka Capital Markets Group. There's a 100% private venture fund when we provide financing for the later stage. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Last but not the least.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michał, Piosik, and I'm an ex-chef, ex-banker. Now I run a food tech accelerator along with my partner Piotr, and we help food tech startups to grow in this country. And I'm also a failure as a wakeboarder, as you can see over here.
I mean, this is more sign of being professional than a failure, but good. So this is a very good balance, not gender-wise, but other than that. So we have a corporation, we have a startup, or a crazy scientist, or a mad scientist.
Maybe.
Yeah. VC
Mad alchemist.
And an accelerator. I mean, you guys also have different, hats, but let's just put it that way. If you want to talk about technology more than anything else, because for a lot of people, when we talk about food, the word technology doesn't really add into the food. So you just chop some beetroots and just kill some chicken, and that's how the food starts. Sorry, some animals get hurt. I know you don't like it. But what is a food tech?
What is food tech? So we try to see food tech as not as a modern way to change the way we eat. We try to see food tech as a place where both technology and food can meet to serve the entire species and the planet as well. So we kind of take these everlasting powers of nature and kind of make them, using of course the modern technology, make them a healing process for humans. So for example, right now we all eat too much meat as a species, right? And what food tech does is tries to replace tries to replace this protein, protein coming from animals with plant-based protein or cellular protein, which is basically replicated cells of animal without hurting the animal or hurting the planet.
We mainly talked about the solid part of that. We can also talk about the liquid part of that on that side. So about the drinks and let's just say the different beverages, where do you really see the technology can also put that into, let's just say, our drinks? And how would be that different from the drinks that we have right now?
Sure. Well, absolutely. When Michał was saying food tech, we're talking about fundamental science that's been around for ages. I mean, you go back to fermentation going 10,000, 20,000 years ago. I mean, these were basic concepts that we were using just to survive. I mean, you make mead, which is one of the basic food supplements for most people. It had alcohol, it was fun, but it was nutritious. Now we're talking about this today. So how do we do that? A lot of the food tech we work with is either going to be developing applications for delivery services. This is a huge boom. We're focusing on developing new products. So alternative sources of protein. We're talking about alternative sources for meat, being more sustainable when it comes to production, waste management, and then we're also talking about the food itself. I think we're really looking at least in my industry specifically, how do we make nutritious food available to everyday people, especially when we're working nonstop? You have to think that we have the most food available right now than we've ever had. The problem with that is that we're starving. Our bodies are literally starving. So nutritious, no. I think this is where, at least for my area of expertise, this is what we're focusing on as food tech, as innovation. Because, if we're working 12, 15-hour days, if not more, McDonald's or other companies that are producing certain foods are just not going to provide us the fundamental basic nutrition that we need. It's just fast, easy, and available. So this is a huge opportunity, I think, or what food tech is offering. We're talking about innovation and technology. We're talking about agriculture. I mean, it's a whole spectrum of things that we need to work on. So try to answer your question when it comes to food tech. It's basically, you either have to have the IT side, you have the agricultural side, and you have the actual food itself. So.
As a person who knows a bit more about Nestlé than a lot of others, how do you really see corporations also try to enter to the whole food tech this ecosystem? Is it something that the startups have to innovate, or also corporations somehow have an eye on this whole technology?
Yeah, that is absolutely important for us. It is the future, and we're also working hard on microbiome. We're entering into the plant-based meat alternatives. So that's definitely the direction we're going there. The challenge with the bigger corporations is you need scale. So the whole model is set up like this, that you need scale. And that's why we have to follow the consumer trends and evolve with the consumers. And that's actually the main factor for us, the consumer, that is sometimes blocking us from moving faster on the evolution. Because you can have the most nutritious, the healthiest food you want, but there is one condition: it has to be consumed to really influence the health and the nutrition of people. And that's how we are evolving with food. And if you look at the trends and the consumption of food, top dishes in Poland, for years, minimal changes. You have your pork chops, you have meatballs, you have chicken breast, top dishes for the last 10 years. But we're definitely looking into it, and we need you guys also to test, to inspire a little bit. And then when the markets become more mature, then we can also help to scale them.
So there's food, and then where the meat comes from basically comes from the money. So metaphorically, we promised that we're not going to talk about meat that often. So where do you really see there's the best opportunity for investment in food tech? Where do you really feel that if the money is going to be inserted, is it going to be more about alternative food? Is it going to be about making the food that we have is going to be more let's just say, efficient? From an investment point of view, where do you think is going to be the most efficient way to inject some investment into the food tech in order to make it work better?
Okay, so when we take into context European investment landscape when it comes to food tech, we are the first one except for California, and we've got many seed stage funding in Europe. And that's the first thing. The second thing is that we see really many projects which are after or during R&D phase with money from National Center of Research Development, for example, or European Commission, but they are still in this ideation and developing stage. And what we need for now, we need money and we need partners to commercialize those products and to scale them. And so there are a lot of good startups, good ideas, which does not have enough resources. I mean, connections. Let's say this food industry, it's mostly offline. It's quite expensive to reach to the distribution channels. So how we look at this, we connect medium companies which has got resources to produce. But with startups, with ideas from universities who has patents, who has a lot of resources. So we connect them, we provide VC money, and that's how we build projects.
So you have the technology, you have the corporations, you have the money. How do you accelerate it?
Can you repeat that, please?
How do you accelerate it? You have the money, you have the startup and a corporation. What is the best way to accelerate a food tech? Is it something that it's enough that you have the formula and the money and just sell it to corporation, or startups have to go through some other processes?
So we believe that the best way to accelerate food tech startup is to connect them to big industry, of course, provided they have the money. Not too much money, because it's a paradox, because if startups have too much money at the beginning, they tend to burn through them cluelessly. So we try to build the program in a way that they start with business modeling. They do a massive market research, see how do these or similar projects take place in the U.S. in more advanced markets. Are there any, or if they are, why they succeed, why they fail? So there's so market research is absolute essentials. Then we put business model, financial model. We teach them how to design a product, not only on the outer layer, but also on the inside. You have clients inside, and this feedback loop with the clients is absolutely essential. So you test your product permanently, and I think, sorry, Marcin, to say this, but this is where the big food has slight problem, because they're massive organizations, and they require this agility that smaller startups have. And I know it's not your fault, but and I know you guys are working on it, but this is the advantage of startups. They can develop their product really quickly. So this is where they help them, where we help them. Of course, we connect them to VCs and kind of give them the kick in those moments where they doubt, because there's a lot of doubts in this business. Frankly, being a food tech startup in Poland is hard, because there's not many of big success cases which have been properly invested by VC, which have big international success. We kind of paved the way over here, and it's a business where a lot of capex investment is needed at the beginning. It's a business which sometimes requires R&D. For example, we have a project in the pipeline right now, which involves cultivated meat. So again, replicated meat cells, and this project will take an R&D phase for at least a couple of years before we can even start thinking about commercializing it. So it's for traditional VC investors, it's something hard to think of. Whereas you can see in the West, they throw in an abundance of money into these kind of projects because they know that the potential win is massive, right? So again, it's hard in Poland, but we have some success cases. For example, one of the startups called Kurczak, It's also a meat replacement it's absolutely vegan, made of bean protein, beans and wheat protein, and it's growing exponentially. We're entering vertical in-store vertical farms in a couple of weeks to test them out in first 2 stores. So again, it's a slow process, but we're getting there with help of those guys over here.
Good. We're going to open up a topic that, let's just call it the future of the food. And then one of the things that we can be a bit edgy, if you don't mind, but that's the fact that a lot of problems that we right now have in the way that we eat is that we don't trust the science. Because a lot of people said that the science in diet comes from corporations somehow backing scientists to prove what they want to have. So for a very long time, we had let's just say, all the carbohydrates as the lower parts, and now they say that, no, that's not true. And then you just say that the other things are the essential ones, all calories count, and then they say, no, that's not true. And when we, let's just say, if at this point at least say we can partially, I know that some people are more scientists than us, but let's just say at least we are food enthusiasts. Even we are confused about which diet is the best or which food is the best. It's really hard for people that they cannot go too far to that story to understand the reality. So I was organizing an event at Startup Grind about the future of the tech. And my friend was like, I like steak. That's why I'm not going to join. And I was like, but nobody said that if you like steak, you're not welcome to the future of the food. So it's like, I always say, it's like, everybody thinks like, okay, this panda is a tree hugger, so just don't get close to them, Where do we really see the reality there? Something that is not commercial, and if you don't mind, you start with a corporation and then try to go back into more, like, just say, startups and the VC part, where we can really get the trust of the consumers back. That the ingredients that we have and the product that we have is not based on our commercial behavior, but rather based on the fact that we really want to make sure that you eat the right food.
I have to ask you to repeat the end of the question.
How do we have to gain the trust of the consumer back? That if there is something written in the corner, no, not all calories count. Or no, like this food was not prepared just because this is the cheapest way for us to make, but rather this is a healthy food for you that is going to make you more energetic, it's going to make you happier, and all the, let's just say, side effects that are real good have to have on your body.
Yeah, I think the trust of the consumer is really the tricky part, and that's why the evolution is also relatively slow in terms of food tech, because people like the natural stories. They like something that they understand. This is, for example, what we do, what we discovered several years ago, and that's the basic principle developing products. We call it kitchen cupboard. So whatever you have in your product, it has to be recognizable from consumers' cupboard. And this is, I think, this is how you build the trust. But I think it's also about being a bit more brave in terms of the evolution and what we do with food and communicating it openly. Because I think there are many topics, and there's a lot of company doing the basics, reducing salt, reducing fats, communicating calories. Nutri-Score will probably arrive to Poland also relatively soon. But I think we have to rethink the system also and make it more transparent. If you talk about food waste, it's a huge problem, and now it's only now that it's starting to come up and to bubble up, and different entities are interested in it. But if you look at how the whole value chain of food looks like, it cannot work like this. And I give you an example of coffee. You know, Nespresso coffee. We already have personalization. We have subscription model. So you can subscribe for your favorite types of coffee. You get it every month. But if you go for holidays for a week, the capsules keep coming. There is no feedback. So in Japan, we're experimenting with like a stance for the capsules that read how much you've used, feedback to the company not to send you too much. And then we have to go a step further. Then you feed back to the supplier, you feed back to the farmer. That's why I think we have to put it upside down. But coffee is much easier than food, because it's very single consumption. It's much easier to identify. So
I think there was a startup like that. It was like a super press or something like that. That they had like a juice that you put it inside a machine, and it was connected to internet. And for the amount of the consumer you had, then the data would go back to the company. But like the device was like $1,000 or so, and then somebody went to internet and then showed that this device, all it's doing is just pressing the juice out. And then everybody wanted their money back, and the whole company basically went down from like $1 million company down to zero. So
that's the point. Maybe one point on this. I think the biggest challenge is how to make it at scale. because all those personalization, the transparency, it's not rocket science, but to make it at scale and have an impact, this is the biggest challenge.
And I'm sorry to say this because you told me that we were not supposed to be tree huggers, but I think the issue of being honest is absolutely essential here. And I think that's what we're all trying to do here is convincing people that if you tackle big problems and you do it honestly, money will follow. So if you do a crappy product for a lot of money, people will want their money back. But if you're transparent from the very beginning and you show people, look, this is science, and it's showed in a really simple way. This will help you. You can heal yourself with food, and and get rid of all the unnecessary plastic. Then more and more people will believe your mission, and they will follow not only your startup, not only your company, but again, investors will follow as well. So I think that honesty here is the answer to your question.
So we have to create honesty. Something that usually comes with honesty is also drink.
I would add that when it comes to this, I think the future of this honesty is blockchain probably in food tech. So I mean that you know that each part of food chain providers, and you know what do they do. You will never consider again, do they trustworthy or do they not? Yeah, so.
Like the product with the Walmart, and I think it was IBM and Walmart. So they did that. You will basically just scan the foods in Walmart, and then they will put it in the blockchain, and then will tell you all the points that it went there. Because the other part is also is that it's not even that much about the trust, but it's about how much we're exploiting some farmers and others. And again, I would say hopefully that would be something the blockchain can help, because then later you will understand that nobody's exploiting farmers and all the money goes to distributors, for example. So you would understand that just say a more smooth way. But okay, thank you. So let's just also go to, I want to say drink tech, but I think it doesn't exist.
Scientist is good. I like that one.
Yeah.
That works. So one thing I wanted to mention, because there's two sides of that coin of transparency, because there's a lot of companies that are hiding, having to patent, having to protect their recipes, having to provide these certain procedures that are going to put them out in the open and create potential losses for them. So that's one side of the coin. I think that's what some of the companies are trying to protect. You know, Coca-Cola has their recipe in lock and key, and it's been hidden for centuries, right? But this is one example of why transparency is hard in some aspects. But of course, knowing where the farm is, who's farming your apples and oranges, and where is it coming from, and seeing that transition, it's an excellent opportunity. And I think it's fundamental to our success to be able to provide products that we understand and know. The other thing, which, you know, having trust in the products that we purchase and understanding, are they actually healthy for us, or not? You know, is this just a marketing scheme, or is it actually something that that we're actually getting from? So it's going to be very hard for us as a consumer to be educated in this. Information is information. So you have so much of it available. It's an abundance of information that we have. There's new research, new studies being put out every day. Companies are doing and funding these researches. So it's kind of like they're providing the funding to be able to do the research, so it benefits them too. So the open door policy for the results, you know, and being that it's supposed to be unbiased, you know, these are questions that are always going to be asked. But as a consumer, just to protect yourself, I think the benefit that we can do is make it as simple of a product as possible. The less that it's produced and manufactured and highly processed, the better, right? The fruit that you eat is going to provide you the most valuable substance that you're going to get. That's nutrition, right? So if we look at products and break them down in that process, in the method that it's created, that allows us to have, you know, more trust in what we're actually getting. You know, I always find it funny because a lot of people say like, oh, I drink juice every day, and that's a healthy beverage. Well, you know, the sugar content in that juice itself is actually not as good as you think. And what's causing it is that if you eat an orange or 10 oranges, well, you're going to get fiber, you're going to get full. And that's basically what you're going to get from the orange eating it. The same amount that's happening in the juice, you're just going to get a skyrocket of sugar. And then, yeah, there are health benefits, but, you know.
I mean, there is a whole story about the pulp and the fact that the moment you take the pulp out of the juice, then you make the juice a commodity, because then you can freeze it, because a juice with pulp is not freezable. And because of that, when you take the pulp out of it, then you can basically just store thousands of tons of juice in somewhere. But This is a sad story. Like I'm just saying, like I think we had to have 40 hours in order to really talk about the food tech. But let's just say we're just somehow trying to put it into only 40 minutes and then try to see what we can do about that. One thing that I would say that massively changed a lot of people's habits was COVID. Again, the elephant in the room. I mean, we don't have an elephant here technically, but you know what we're talking about. One funny thing that happened in COVID was that like a lot of people started to eat more healthy. Like sourdough was more famous than COVID, and everybody's sourdough was different than the other, and people started growing vegetables and then, let's just say, cooking inside. You can take it from different angles, maybe even start with the corporation part, because I think it's a customer behavior that somehow drastically changes. How do you see the COVID somehow change the customer behavior regarding the food? And if you don't mind me also just pushing it even further, how do we have to take advantage of that?
Yeah, I think that this the time we live in right now is really fascinating also from the food perspective, and it accelerates a lot. So I see it as a big opportunity. The trends, the long-term trends, are now sometimes pushing back against the short-term needs. If you think about the need for naturality, openness, and so on, you have also more consumers buying packed food and packed meat right now. Meat consumption actually in Poland has been growing for the last 10 years. This year, it starts decreasing because of the packed food and so on. But I think the main benefit for the industry and for the consumers is that people really put more attention to cooking and the ingredients they prepare. Consumers cook more nowadays. And when you cook, you put more attention to ingredients, to the amount you cook, to the waste you generate, and so on and so on. So people who have never really had any discussion with themselves in terms of nutrition, eating, now they are forced to do it. And we see a lot of positives coming out of it, more interest in cooking, like you said, looking for recipes and so on and so on. And I think this is here to stay. This will be the one-off benefit, so to say, that will stay with us for a long time, and there will be much more awareness in terms of cooking and cooking in a nutritious way.
Sure. Even if we go back, I want to start with something maybe 60, 70 years ago. Mass production was key. You know, we were talking about producing fast, cheap, effective products that were available. Now we're talking about how do we make the opposite, right? How do we make something that is slow, that's right, but scalable, of course, that has value, and people are concerned with the way they feel. And basically, you know, the biggest killer is our diet. You know, we die basically by what we eat. So if we didn't know that, well, if we do now, nutrition is the key fact. So we're looking at opportunities and how do we do that, you know? People maybe aren't really well educated on how to make food. So, you know, Michał here has probably got a great deal with his school and stuff. So, you know, a lot of people are learning, okay, I can cook like this, and this is coming. You know, I think a lot of people are being more alert and aware what products are available that help make a food more valuable, more nutritious for us. And that has an effect on disease, on the way we feel, our vitality, how we work. You know, this is all connected. So, and it's basically a group thing. I mean, it's all put together. We're talking about, you know, being active, feeling good, being in a community. When we're working together with people, we also have this good feeling. So it's basically a complex. You know, it's not just one thing. So the future, I think, with what we're dealing with now, like he said, it's absolutely changing. We're thinking. I'm sure it's going to stick. I mean, I don't know about you, but you go to the store and you start looking at something more specific, or you get the Lunchable or the something that you make in the microwave right away. I mean, I don't know. I don't anymore. So that's my thought.
Do you want to also add some?
I think that's right. People now are much more self-aware. What do they eat? It is said that software is eating the world, but humans are eating the food. So that's the case. And in the next 30 years, we have to solve the problem of, first of all, of feeding bigger population, and we have to rise food production by 50%. And at the same time, we have to lower the greenhouse gases emission. So those are big challenges. And I see that 12% of total funding in the world is purpose-driven startups, and I think the food tech is exactly in this trend. And we see many investors especially former business owners who are willing to do something good for society, and I think that we have to attract them, and I think that's the moment.
So I think the guys here touched a very important note, and I think it kind of goes back to what we said at the beginning, is that what we're trying to do with Foodtech is kind of we made the food really complex over the years. We added this piece of chemistry, this preservative, and so on and so forth. And right now we're trying to kind of clean the label so it has 1, 2, 3, and that's it. So take for example the vertical farming. There's a lot of those projects around the world because they solve so many issues, and they look forward to the future, which is, for example, we in Poland are going to have, we don't have enough water, right? So we have to take our crops from the fields and put them inside the buildings and make the water go round and round and round. And people think, my God, this technology is not natural. But if you look at it, you can see that the plants inside, they grow without any pesticides, no added chemistry. So you're going back to what your grandmas and grandpas did on the field. They just put a little bit of, chicken, leftovers, just to make them grow. So the biodynamic fertilizer, and that's it. You don't need anything else, and it will go perfectly. Now, the technological component that we put is we analyze how the plants grow the best. So we add the exact the same light that is in the sun, and we put them in exact amount, so there is absolutely no waste of energy. So it's perfectly balanced, it's as natural as possible, and it can feed the world. So I think this is what Foodtech is, and I think this is the future, and I think this is what we're all, heading towards.
I mean, it's kind of also, what you mentioned is kind of funny, especially like in Silicon Valley, Boulder kind of stuff. Like, people started getting back chickens and making their own bread, and I was like, so are we moving forward or are we moving backward? Because like my grandparents, they had chicken, then my parents didn't have it, and then I was like, what, are we gonna have it right now? So this is, let's just say, somehow it just shows that sometimes we even somehow are rejecting technology because we really feel that maybe at some point we lost our path. That's kind of what the message that I wanted to pass through. But if we just try to not to be too theoretical and at least try to have a level of practicality to that. Okay, so I was always going in that side, and I'm just going to go the other way around. If there would be one thing that you would be able to change in the way that we eat, that we are going to eat better, what would you do?
That is a really tricky question because there's so many bad things in people's
go back on that
diet.
side, then you will have more time.
There's so many bad things, but I would try to say, be at balance, because there are many people who want to go radical at everything they do, like stop eating meat at all, or do sports every day. And of course, doing sports and eating moderately meat is good, but you can do all of those things. Just do them on occasion. So for example, eat fish twice a week, meat once a week, and then a little bit of eggs, a little bit of that. Be at balance, do sport in moderation, drink alcohol in moderation, and it's all going to be good. So I think moderation is the key, because what is driving our economy and the planet in such a bad direction is that we're over-consuming, and we're over-consuming sugar, we're over-consuming meat, we're getting fat, we have heart disease, and so on and so forth. So again, moderation in that matter is the key.
So in your point, the moderation. Sorry? Your point is mainly the moderation in the consumption.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm the moderator, so let's just say. That's one good thing about it.
So I think the case is to eat as simple as possible, what Michał lastly said, and do not eat processed food. Yeah, and the next one will tell something more about that.
Sure. Moderation, yeah, that's a good one. If I can do that, I would love that. Yeah. But anyway, so absolutely, I think you're right. It's just it's a nice goal to aim. I think a lot of, at least my personal thing that I would love to see is actually having the value of nutrition in everyday products that we use. So, between your meetings or you're at work and you have nonstop, you're plugged in, you got to do stuff. Having an access and availability to a product or products that are actually going to provide you the basic need and energy that you need to survive and feel good. That's what I would like to see. I think that's fundamental. I mean, we're talking about, I'm more into the beverage industry and this kind of stuff, and more so it's for me in this aspect. And I would love, actually, if alcoholic beverages were kind of healthy. At least they had an additional benefit. So that for me would be a great opportunity to see where basically we lost this whole fermentation process where we were going back a few centuries or even further ago, where this was actually a healthy product. I mean, it had basic needs, it had protein, it had sugar, it had value to it. It was low in alcohol, and it actually created a nutritional value. And this is something that I see that we've lost. And I would love to see that. I would love to see that. Again, moderation, right?
Moderation.
Yeah, I would look at it a bit.
You can also say moderation, and then we can just wrap it up.
Fully agree. Yeah. Now I would look at it also a bit from not purely from what's inside the product perspective, because I think in the product we are going in the right direction. And you mentioned whether we are going forward or backward. I think what seems backward is forward. What Henry mentioned, it's technology, leveraging technology, but relating to what consumers know. So sauerkraut is a staple actually in Poland. It's less of an issue to explain because your grandmother explained to you why it's healthy. Western Europe is discovering fermentation right now. It's like a wow effect, but it's been there for years. So I think it's this relation. But I would look also at food in the future. I think it's key to look at the impact what we eat and how we eat, how we prepare, and the impact it has on the environment, on the footprint. And this is from the waste perspective, because I think this is a topic that has been, is for food especially, it's super complex. It's really complex, and no one has tackled it really properly. It's being tackled superficially. And the other is really the alternative, plant-based. And I think there is awareness already. There is traction, and it's moving, and I think this is also important.
I mean, especially when I really try to take a look at cultivated meat and the environmental effect of that, I mean, it's unbelievable why we're not going there. And again, going back to not being a tree hugger, like when you see alternative meat, that's meat. Because a lot of people say that without eating meat, I feel better. So we're not even talking about that part of that. Because we don't have that much time, I'm just going to, it's a waste of time if you talk about food, but we don't talk about food. And as long as, like I know that all of you guys are foodies, so I'm just going to finish it with that one. Every one of you tell me your favorite food, and then we just wrap it up on that one. Because trust me, there's nothing more, like delicious and more interesting from my point of view than talking about food. So what is your favorite food?
My favorite food? Oh, I have a range of them. But I cook mostly what my kids
This is not product placement.
No, I'm the
yogurt.
I'm the traditional guy with red borscht and white borscht and so on. So these are the traditional favorites.
It could be liquid also.
Tough question, man. Everything. I mean, anything that I can learn, anything that I can cook. Oh. No, but really, because I use going into moderation, but I try to put everything on my plate. Everything on my plate that's going to give me value and actually do the things that I need to do during the day. So it can be anywhere from it's everything: Mediterranean, Asian, American. Well, maybe not so much unless there's like sweet potatoes involved. But yeah,
Fascinated with the food.
Just anything that's good for me, right?
It's a tough question. I'm quite foodie, so I like to eat. So, but in general, I think I love meat. That's the truth. But there are some projects like kurczak, which changed my perspective totally, and it's good that's happening.
Great.
One last thought on moderation. It's an investors' conference. I want to say that there is a huge upside to what we're talking about. If every one of us, every person in Warsaw changed one meal per week into a plant-based meal, this company that produces this plant-based meal would earn hundreds of millions of zloty a year. Okay. So my favorite meal at this point...
Kurczak?
Yeah, I want to say kurczak. Let's go for it.
Hey, pizza, right? Pizza.
Pizza. Yeah. Neapolitan pizza.
Let me also finish by chocolate. So, guys, thank you very much for giving us your time. It was a very delicious panel, and hope we're going to have a better food in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.